this is something that, we knew was coming, and it's happened now. This went from don't worry about it in 2019 to settling for $418 million 5 years later. That's bad
I'll
leadership and bad business. If you're not getting educated about local real estate news and market conditions, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice, especially if you're a real estate agent, you're an attorney, you're in title finance. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole here with Byron Lazine. And Byron, I did all this prep work today, all for naught, because we've got breaking news. Hopefully Bobby can play one of those sound effects here. This got released right before we jumped on the pod. NAR, the National Association of Realtors, reached an agreement to resolve the nationwide claims brought by home sellers and are settling for $418 million in the commission lawsuits. Before we prepped, I went to my emails to see if I saw anything from NAR or my local real estate association or the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. I've got nothing. I don't know about you. Berkshire Hathaway still hasn't settled. There's a lot to unpack here. Byron, you've been all over this. I think BAM broke the story first before anybody else.
Well, New York Times broke the story in the real estate
in the real estate space. Yes, correct.
Yeah. BAM had it. We were just the fastest.
Okay. So New York Times breaks this story. I read the article. I mean, it was kind of more of the same. There's not a lot of details released yet. Obviously, this has to get approved by the court. Instant reaction from Byron Lazine. What is your take on this?
Failed leadership at the top once again. NAR, local boards, probably your broker, but they probably found out the same way you did, New York Times. If New York Times had this story and it comes to, sources, Tom, sources into BAM say that there was an emergency meeting called at NAR this morning. So NAR says, here's what they say internally. And this is just a guess. They say, let's get an emergency meeting and go into scramble mode because we know the New York Times is about to tell the story, as opposed to, why don't we craft an email? Why don't we craft a letter? Should have already been crafted once you had a settlement in place so that our members hear it from us first. But this proves over and over and over and over and over again. NAR doesn't give a crap about their members. Go look up the article on BAM from this week, where we're the first ones this year to update the salaries from 2022 to employees and to vendors from NAR. They care about protecting that.
Mm-hmm.
They care about making a TV show on Hulu with a $50+ million marketing budget. Now we have Tom, in 2022, they had net income of, I think, 22 million. We could bring up I can bring up the article and get the exact number, but it was over 20 million. They spent over 50 million on marketing, Tom, and we're paying out 418 million right now. What does that mean? An assessment for the members? They don't care about the members. They care about their salaries. They care about keeping the thing that they've had going on internally into the future. I know brokers across the country who haven't said a peep about this to their agents. It's disrespectful. I know a whole bunch of local boards. I'm refreshing my email right now. And listen, we're recording this at 10:20 a.m. Eastern time on Friday. This
Real
news
time.
just broke. So this is a little bit of a reactionary pod, obviously. But I'm refreshing my email. Nothing from my local board. You said nothing from your local board.
Nope. Or PAR. Or there's two local boards here. There's one in Philadelphia and one in the suburbs. Nothing on either of those. I texted someone I know who serves in leadership at our local board, someone that's a very competent agent, got a lot of respect for this person. I'm sure this person's phone's blowing up right now. So and this was literally right when we jumped on the pod. You talked about being disrespectful. And, I look at this very similar to a large organization that does the same thing to its members, the NCAA and its athletes. And then the NIL got passed, and that changed everything. And they were trying to control the people under there so the NCAA could get theirs. You said it, Byron. NAR, there's a lack of leadership here. I'm surprised they jumped Berkshire Hathaway. It's clear to me there's no communication going on between NAR and the large big box brokerages named. maybe the big box brokerages we're talking, I'm not really sure. Berkshire Hathaway seems to be in a different position because of the Warren Buffett affiliation, and maybe they have more money. I got a text from my mentor and another agent in our firm. Where the heck does NAR get this money? And that's someone who's not as informed as maybe you and I are following this. And they're spending a lot of money. I mean, you're talking about 50 million. That's 1/6 of the, or 1/8 of the lawsuit, basically, right? That could have been money saved. These NAR ads don't do anything. And when looking at this here, I had some conversations about this stuff this week. It really just devalues, the realtor designation. I think there's going to be a lot of value breaking away from NAR moving forward and being an independent organization that focuses on consumers. This is something that, we knew was coming, and it's happened now. This went from don't worry about it in 2019 to settling for $418 million 5 years later. That's
I'll
bad leadership and bad business.
I'll tell you how NAR thinks they're getting the money. It's
Raising the
pretty
dues.
it's obvious to me. So, according to the full form 990 tax document for 2022, because NAR is a nonprofit, so
Hmm. Sure.
they have to disclose all these things, but it's 2 years lagging data, right? We just got 2022's data in 2024. That's how that racket works. So according to the full form 990 tax document for 2022, just released, you can find this on nowbam.com. We'll put the article here in the show notes as well. NAR's total revenue in that year was 328 million plus. Okay. Total functional expenses for the fiscal year amounted to 305 million plus. The salaries are all listed on here. They're absurd. Hava's marketing group alone got 45 million. A technology video production company, video production services, got 5 million. Another media group got almost 3 million. So they spent over 50 million, and they've got a show on Hulu. Now, net income, Tom,
Hmm.
here's what they left net income at. $22,694,000. So it would take decades to get to 418 million based off net income. Here's where they're going to get the money. They're going to say to NAR members, hey, we're doubling your dues for the next 5 years. Because if you double their dues, they're going to make 650 million. They could carve out 418 million in year one. They won't do that because they'll piss money away like they always do. But they'll double dues for like 3 to 5 years. Try to make this a moneymaker for themselves, by the way. Bob Goldberg in that year, 2022, made 2.591 million. Anyways, I want to get back to what's in the New York Times. So we were kind of, bragging there. Bam got the article out before the rest of the industry, before the Inmans, before those guys did. We were just faster. Speed is a luxury that we have in our operation. But New York Times broke the story. Okay, so the credit goes to New York Times. Now, the person who wrote the story, Deborah Kamen, she obviously also hates realtors. She's reporting on the story, but she's not reporting, I would say, like a journalist would, because she hasn't done enough digging and research. American homeowners could see this is how she leads the article. American homeowners could see a significant drop in the cost of selling their homes after a real estate trade group agreed to a landmark deal that will eliminate a bedrock of the industry, the standard 6% sales commission. We know that in 2024, your business operations will be more important than ever. Once I figured this out, my business was able to scale and take off. See, generating leads is one thing, but getting that deal across the finish line while keeping everyone happy is another story. Enter Mosaic, everything you need once a lead becomes a client. Mosaic picks up where CRMs leave off to streamline the client experience and maximize your productivity. It's the operating platform that gives agents and teams everything they need to stay organized and proactive throughout the entire transaction process and beyond. Transaction management, forms, AI-powered collaborative search, client retention capabilities, and advanced analytics for your business. In other words, you can use Mosaic to create a powerful flywheel for your business. It will help you close every deal, boost your profitability, and generate more repeat and referral business. If you need a better way to run your business, check out the link below and learn how Mosaic can help you today.
What a load of crap that is, because if you look at the statistics, the average is less than 6% for it's been going on decades now. I mean, that's factual and documented. Keep going. But I mean, that just demonstrates, like what you said, this person must hate real estate agents. And
This
maybe
is
she had a bad one. I don't know.
this is poor journalism. The National Association of Realtors, a powerful organization that has set its guidelines for home sales for decades, has agreed to settle a series of lawsuits. So settle a series of lawsuits. So we're assuming here, there's not a lot of clarity in this New York Times article, but we're assuming that this is a blanket settlement for the 20 plus lawsuits happening now, future lawsuits. And that's what they're trying to get approved here, paying $418 million in damages, and by eliminating its rule on commissions. Okay, so we're going to get to what they've potentially agreed to here and what could potentially get approved in the settlement. Legal counsel for NAR approved the agreement early Friday morning. Okay, so they're saying, so New York Times had
they knew this was going on.
The inside baseball. Okay, it got approved this morning, and New York Times obtained a copy of the signed document. So Times got the copy from the attorneys, okay? But NAR, the attorneys have been leaking information to New York Times and Wall Street Journal this entire time. Why can't you be a leader for once? And, that's what I'm a little bit,
but when you have four people that have gone through the CEO and president role, however, I mean, it's been a revolving door there where they had Bob Goldberg, and they had the guy Kenny. Kenny.
Well, Kenny was the president. Goldberg was CEO.
All these people are in and out. I mean, they've gone through, I think, 5 leadership changes since all this started in the past 6 months. So that's failure number one, is they couldn't get the top spot secured or the leadership secured because these people were doing other things instead of focusing on the main thing, what's most important, which is this case. And they're, worried about padding their bank accounts, treating people poorly, alleged sexual harassment within the organization. They weren't focused on their job, and they let everybody down when you have this many leadership changes in a short period of time. Then someone got blackmailed. I mean, like but you can't make this up.
Well, their leadership, I always said, hey, it's confusing to me that you have brokerages settling before NAR. NAR should be leading the settlements. Then I said, okay, well, maybe they have a strategic plan to kind of get those numbers in what we thought maybe were low, but it's what the brokerages could afford. And then they go last, but they went in the middle. Berkshire Hathaway Home Services still hasn't had the opportunity to settle because the attorneys are trying to rake them over the coals because they think Uncle Warren's going to pull into Warren Buffett. That is a line item, if that, on his company. He probably let the thing go bankrupt before he overpays in a set. Not Berkshire Hathaway agents. I'm not saying that that's what he's going to do, nor should he. It's a fantastic brand. And I think Warren I don't even think Warren's involved in negotiations, by the way. But the point is that they're trying to extort Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and NAR jumps the line now. Hopefully this sets, you heard some pretty high numbers for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Hopefully this sets their number back down closer to where the other brokerages were. You have a whole bunch of academiites. Is that the word for academics?
Academics. My brother's one, so I know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mr. Toole academic. Housing experts said the deal and expected savings for homeowners could trigger one of the most significant jolts in the U.S. housing market in 100 years. This will blow up the market. This is a quote. And would force a new business model. This is according to Norm Miller, a professor emeritus. Is that how they say that word? I didn't go to college.
Working out okay for you, Byron.
There's a fancy word for
I think that's the non-practicing professor is what they mean. They don't teach anymore, and they just kind of sit around and collect the check from the university because, college is really fairly priced too if we want to talk about that stuff.
He's professor emeritus of real estate at University of San Diego. You got a whole bunch of these quotes in this New York Times article, but let's get to what they agreed to, Tom. They go through the commissions. I mean, they're really hung up on the 6% commission. They make the Expedia kayak example as if online portals haven't existed for 20 plus years in real estate. By the way, Tom, I've been doing research on the travel industry. I'm going to give a teaser to all our knowledge broker people out here right now. I'm coming out with a study on this. And there are still a significant amount of travel agents that still exist. Brick and mortar travel agents don't exist, but you'll be shocked to learn how many still exist. So when people throw that in your face, I'm coming out with a study on why that's a bad argument from that side. It tells you that the top 60 or 70% of agents certainly will exist if they want to use that argument. But going into what they're potentially agreeing to is, here we go. The settlement includes many significant rule changes. It bans NAR from establishing any sort of rules that would allow a seller's agent to set compensation for a buyer's agent. So NAR can't set a rule, which kind of really didn't exist in the first place. But
I agree with that.
So they can't set a rule that would allow for an agent to set compensation for the seller agent to set compensation for the buyer agent. Okay, but could the seller do it? That's unclear. Could the seller say, I want to offer commission? Okay. This is a practice that critics have long said led to steering. I don't see that in my experience. Tom, between the two of us, we sold well over 1,000 homes in the last 12 months. We add lease in here. We're upwards of 2,000, so we're not seeing that in our experience, but on the online databases used to buy and sell homes, MLS, the settlement requires that any fields displaying broker compensation be eliminated entirely. Now, in the New York Times article, it says the MLS. So you wouldn't see compensation in the MLS as well as brokerage sites, okay? This is how it reads. And on the online databases used to buy and sell homes, comma, the MLS, comma, the settlement requires that any fields displaying broker compensation be eliminated entirely. So agents wouldn't see that in the MLS. So
by the way, that's how commercial real estate works. Typically, you've got to negotiate your compensation, with the seller, and there's, I think that the issue that they're talking about here is that, like, forced entitlement. We've talked about this a lot, where I showed the house, I'm entitled to the commission. That's not how it's going to work anymore. We've been coaching our teams, our agents, our organizations on this. Commercial real estate has been that way for a long time. It's not unlike selling a for sale by owner, where you have to negotiate your compensation. And so I mean, there's ways for knowledge brokers out there listening, there's ways that you're going to be able to still have a thriving business, but you got to know everything about this and exactly what to do in these situations.
It also places a blanket ban on the long-time requirement that agents subscribe to MLSs in the first place in order to offer or accept compensation for their work. So is that the same as saying you don't have to be a member also of your board to get access to the MLS? It's kind of like the reverse. Okay, you don't have to. Well, of course I don't have to subscribe to the MLS to get an offer of compensation for my work. There's not going to be any offer on the MLS.
Yeah.
So that's kind of stating the obvious. But MLS is still a useful tool. You don't want to upload to all these different portals individually. And I don't know how you do it without the MLS, right?
Maybe what would be valuable here is getting a New York City broker on the pod, because that's how they operate right now. They don't have an MLS. They have an MLS clone, is what it's like from what we've told from some of our friends.
Tex Rubin. I mean, what does he do? I mean, I think he's got something that puts it out to all the portals, right? He's not uploading to.
No, he does have something that ports it out. Yes.
He's got something that blasts it out, because that'd be insane. You'd have to every single, he's at Douglas Elliman, then you'd have to upload to Sotheby's and to, whoever else. The reset button on all right, so that was Ketchmark's quote there. I'm not going to read that. So NAR has repeatedly insisted that it does not own MLSs, but the majority of them are owned and operated by local realtor associations that operate as NAR subsidiaries. See, that's the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If your local board owns the MLS, is there this article, New York Times, they got to the story first. Great. But there's a lot of questions here. Will the tie-in agreement still exist that you have to be a member of your board, your local board, if you want to have access to the MLS? And oftentimes when you have to be a member of, or, to get the MLS access, you have to be a member of the local board. Oftentimes then you're required to be a member of NAR. So is that tie-in agreement still in place? I don't think these lawsuits really care about that, when to me, that's the most egregious thing that NAR is doing.
I've spoken to a number of legal experts and attorneys on this, real estate attorneys. That is their biggest issue with all of this is the tie-in. It's like, hey, in order to get in the MLS, you got to join the board. So the MLS in our market's like $130 a quarter, $140 a quarter. Then you got the NAR dues, which are $500, $700 a year, depending on what your state dues are. And then there's an application fee for new agents of another $500. And knowing what the average real estate agent makes, I mean, and they typically don't get a lot of value out of NAR. They go to the NAR orientation, right? What does that do? I mean, it's no different than the licensing classes where it doesn't teach you how to be a practitioner in real estate. So that's the biggest problem here. I totally agree with you. Go ahead.
We've got NAR. NAR just sent out an email while we're on the pod. 10:31 a.m. Eastern time here on this Friday, March the 15th.
See if I got it here.
So this is from Kevin Sears, President Kevin Sears. I mean, he's been in the job all of 90 days or 60 days. We'll just read it out here. Fellow member Sitzer Burnett verdict and the copycat cases filed across the country have risen questions about the way real estate professionals do their job and how consumers can hire compensated. Since the litigation began, we worked consistently. I would add in and inadequately to reach a resolution with the plaintiffs in the months since we would redouble those efforts. We have always wanted to reduce the significant strain on our members, provide path forward for the industry. This is why today we announced. You didn't announce it. You did not announce it.
The New York Times announced it.
You should have said this is why the New York Times announced it before I was able to write this letter to you. Proposed settlement that would end litigation of the claims brought on behalf of of home sellers related to broker commissions. The settlement is subject to court approval. The agreement would resolve claims against NAR, over 1 million NAR members, all state, territorial, and local realtor associations, all association-owned MLS services, and all brokerages with an NAR member as a principal that had a residential transaction volume in 2022 of $2 billion or below. Interesting here, Tom. When you read that line, okay, you've got all territorial associations. So those that have already dropped out of their association. But it says coverage in 2022. So you could have been a member in 2022.
Okay. And we saw the drop off happen more last year than anything else. So, okay.
Throughout the settlement process, we engage with a diverse range of members and consider their perspectives, their insights, while fighting to protect all industry players. We could. From the beginning of the litigation, we had two goals: secure release liability for as many of our members, associations, and MLS as we could, and preserve the choices consumers have regarding the real estate service compensation. Proposed settlement achieves both of these goals. Here are the key terms. Release of liability, which we just mentioned there at the top. The agreement would release NAR, over 1 million NAR members, all state, territorial, and local realtor associations, all association-owned MLSs, all brokerages, NAR principal, I've just read that. NAR far to include all members releases ensure more than 1 million members are included. They keep saying more than 1 million, but we have more than 1.5 million. So are some left out? Next bullet point. Compensation offers moved off the MLS. NAR has agreed to put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on the MLS. Offers of compensation could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals, and sellers can offer buyer concessions on an MLS. For example, concessions for buyer closing costs.
So this is interesting because I'm looking at this.
That change will go into effect this year, Tom, mid-July.
So I look at that caught my eye. I was reading this while you were going through it, and that compensation offer moved off the MLS. Lisa has spoken about this before. Well, if you offer out whatever the X fee, right? We don't set fees here. I'm not going to talk numbers. And well, what if an offer comes in and the home's been sitting on the market a little longer, and the agent asks for more than what the seller planned on offering out? Could that cost the seller some money, right? I mean, this is, instead of saying, here's what we're willing to pay, they might have to negotiate something. I mean, this is where I think a lot of people aren't sure. We talked, I guess it was 2 weeks ago on the pod about what's going to be allowable with financing. So, sure, you can concessions for buyer closing costs. That's fine. But FHA said they're not going to allow it. VA is not going to allow it. And you're going to be limited on the type of loan that you have in terms of how much concessions you can get. So there's going to have to be some like a two-step process here to maybe change some of these laws because there's some buyers that aren't going to be able to afford it. I mean, that's the reality here. This is going to I think this is going to create more problems than what the system that we're moving from.
Oh, this is not going to be a perfect system by any means, but interesting that it's going to go into effect mid-July 2024. So MLSs are going to be scrambling to maybe get that field off of their MLS, the compensation field. Listen, here, Tom, here's a prediction. Should I put a number on this? I'll put a number on it. 1 out of 4 managers are laid off by the end of 2024. 1 out of 4 brokerage managers laid off by the end of 24. You know why? A lot of brokerage managers are just chasing around compensation all day. And a lot of them try to hold firm on, the brokerage isn't giving up an inch. If you want to pull it out of your agent's pocket, go ahead. A lot of brokerages just got deemed useless here.
Well, the worst kind of manager is the manager that does a little bit of everything. We've had this conversation. And if that's their job to firefight or problem solve, now I know what our management structure is here. It's very specific and tactical. We've talked about this at length, right? I remember specifically there was a company that goes unnamed. You said, "Oh, I don't want to be that company. They got the manager that does a little bit of everything and isn't effective at much." That's exactly what you're going to be talking about here. I could not agree with that more. And it could be more than 1 out of 4.
Yeah, I'm just saying by the end of 24, the changes go into effect July 24 here on the compensation with the MLS. Written agreements for MLS participants acting for buyers. While NAR has been advocating for the use of written agreement for years, in the settlement, we have agreed to require MLS participants are required working with buyers to enter in a written representation agreements with their buyers. This change goes into effect July 2024.
I got to tell you, that's a big problem for most people. I know what licensing law says in Pennsylvania, and I've had agents that have come to our organization. They've been doing business for a while. Why am I getting a buyer agency contract signed? And they're entering into a contractual agreement to buy a house. This is real life. And our response is that's against licensing law. We've consulted with our attorneys about this, and every state's different. I'm talking about Pennsylvania specifically. Most people are lazy with their paperwork. They don't even know what the laws are in their state. And they don't know how to get consumer notices signed, which in Pennsylvania is something we need to do. Buyer agency contracts. They don't know when closing cost estimates are required. All of the sudden, imagine, Byron, someone writes up an offer on your listing and the seller says, well, hey, do they have a contractual relationship with the buyer? Are they actually representing them, or do they just show a house and write up an offer? All of a sudden, there's not forced compensation anymore. Those people are SOL because they didn't learn the proper way to do things in the first place, or they think they can cut corners. And that's one of the problems that the vast majority of real estate agents, Club 87, find themselves in constantly. The knowledge brokers know the laws in their state, understand the paperwork. People are going to, they get nervous about getting a buyer agency contract signed. Would you take a listing without a listing contract, Byron? Absolutely not. You can't do that. This shouldn't be any different. This change, I think, is a good thing for the business because people know exactly where they stand with their agent.
This is, so you know who this is a problem for?
Yes, I do know. Zillow.
That's
Zillow.
a big problem. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, Zillow, listen, we're both Zillow partners.
Both Flex partners. Big fan of Zillow. Has done a lot for my business. I also know we train our agents a lot differently than some of the other partners. We have different protocols in place to follow these sorts of things. The challenge is the people that are used to, hey, I caught the call. I'm showing the house. I'm going to go through this the easy way. Well, you're going to get more of, especially now that this is hitting the New York Times. Like a friend of ours sent it out to a group text we're in where it popped up. He got the notification. You think other people aren't seeing this. There's going to be a challenge here where if you don't know how to deliver value as an agent, you're not going to get compensated. You can't just show a house anymore.
it'll be interesting because they have broker licenses. I'm getting so many text messages right now. It's insane. So they have broker licenses. Are they going to put out some type of statement?
I'm surprised they haven't addressed it with a lot of their flex partners, by the way. I mean, they've been very quiet.
What time is it right now? It's
10:47.
Look up. I'll continue reading this. Look up Zillow stock today. Remember the guy that shorted it?
Yes. It's down 7.96%.
Yeah. It may crater at some point today. I might have to end this pod and go sell my stock.
So it opened at $55.48. It's down to $49. The low is $49.47. It's at $50.84 right now.
That short seller said they had it at like $25 to $30 stock.
Redfin's down 4%. I mean, the real Zillow Inc. Class A is down 7.65%.
It's really the same, both Z and all right. So here's where they address the settlement payment, paying $418 million over approximately 4 years. Tom, guess what? The assessment will be 4 years because they're going to pay the settlement.
It's like a homeowner's assessment, right? That's exactly what's going to happen.
Listen to this. Here's in the NAR email. This is a substantial sum, and it will be incumbent on NAR to use our remaining resources in the most effective way possible to continue delivering on our core mission. NAR membership dues for 2024 will not change because of this payment. Of course, not for 24. You didn't say anything about 25. And by the way, you're saying you got to use your remaining sources in the most effective way possible. We have over a decade of how you've spent your resources and you've been squandering it. This would be a drop in the bucket. $418 million. They could write a check today if they didn't spend $50 million a year on Hava's marketing group to make Hulu TV shows and commercials that impacts nobody.
Their commercials sucked, by the way. I mean, those are some of the worst commercials I've ever seen.
They impact nothing. NAR continues to deny any wrongdoing, and so there's that. They've got a video. I'll give NAR some credit here. This is a lengthy email. It's laid out where we are today. Why settling now makes sense. NAR we're doing this in real time on this pod. This is crazy. We'll obviously have more next week as we have a week to kind of digest some of the stuff. NAR explored settling throughout the litigation, also carefully considered the other legal options. These included appealing. These included, they put this in the email, Chapter 11 reorganization. Chapter 11 is bankruptcy. In theory, Chapter 11 would have enabled NAR members to eliminate its own liabilities while pursuing an appeal. But we believe that would have left members with continued uncertainty and potential liability risk. Chapter 11 would have also paused the litigation against NAR, but not other defendants in the cooperative compensation cases. Ultimately, while NAR continues to believe that it is not liable for home seller claims related to broker commissions, that we have strong arguments challenging Sitzer Burnett verdict. We have decided to reach a settlement, put claims to rest for the members, be released under the agreement. The practice changes go into effect mid-July 2024. That's what's next. The settlement, subject to court approval, could take several months. Could include objections from the other side. We'll move to have litigation about the MLS cooperative compensation model rule stayed or paused as NAR pending settlement approved process. NAR will also continue to provide updates as this unfolds. They have a website set up, competition.realtor. I think there was a lengthy email. They did answer quite a few of the uncertain questions that I have, except for the big one. Is the tie-in agreement still in effect? If I want to be using MLS in my state, I understand MLS isn't going to be a useful tool for offering compensation. But if I still want to use the MLS, there's a lot of great things about a local MLS.
Go ahead.
But do I have to then be required to be a part of the local board? And if the local board owns it, okay, then I guess I do. But does that mean I must tie in now to NAR? That is an unanswered question going through this email quickly.
Since April, we have uploaded new and sought-after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business into the BAMX platform. not articles behind a paywall that only pontificate to you what you should think and do, but education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX and our private Facebook community. Content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. It's why over 1,500 of you and climbing have joined us in BAMX. It's also why tomorrow's price is guaranteed to be higher than today's. That's called inflation. Do not wait any longer. Use code Knowledge Brokers and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Code Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BAMX.
Well, I know why they're not answering that question, because they don't want people leaving NAR. That's how they're going to set this 4-year assessment for this settlement, Byron. So of course they're not going to be addressing that. I've got a different approach on this. I've been taking some notes as we went through this, and I've got a hard stop in 9 minutes here. So I want to make sure this is communicated to the people that plan on being in the business after all these changes take place. The knowledge brokers, the real ones, right? There's a couple things you're going to have to do to your business right now. One is get an understanding of paperwork, how to deliver value to buyers, and what the mechanics look like in terms of negotiating compensation and the right way to present it. This is going to be different for every state. The laws are different. There's different rules. You've got to know that first and foremost. Secondly, you've got to be ready to handle every single objection that's going to come up around, why am I paying you? What are you worth? What's your value? No different for other industries like attorneys. There's some attorneys that charge more, some attorneys that charge less. Same with accountants, right? So you've got to get really clear on all the possible objections and questions that are going to come up, because that's what objections are. And 3, your initial presentation better be on point. Because Byron, you said this, we've talked about this. Every day is a job interview. That's what you're doing as a real estate agent. And there's going to be a lot of people that thrive in this environment. There's going to be others that run away, that put their head in the sand. Like a lot of the leadership we've talked about. I know which direction I'm going. And if you're not doing those 3 basic things, like this is no different than anything else. To me, you can talk about the media and the New York Times article all you want. Things have changed dramatically in the past 2 hours. And this is going to be something, if you're a practitioner and you're serious about the profession and you believe the things that I believe, Byron, I know you believe, Lisa does as well, that we're fundamentally helping people here with real estate, you've got to make some pivots, work on your skills, and you can't just go through the motions anymore.
While we're recording this pod, we put up a green screen. Jason Cassidy broke it down. Guess who's calling me right now?
Who's that? Bob Goldberg.
Allan Dalton.
Ooh. You want to, and I can just go on here for a couple minutes. You can take the call.
No, I'll call him back. Allan is famously the person that did he was on the Tom Ferry clip that was played in court. This bleep. And by the way, we're going to put something out that,
he got beat up a little bit on that one.
He got wrongfully beat up. He's made a huge impact in this industry for multiple decades. Anyways, somebody just sent me this comment. I'm trying to read through it. Compensation offers moved off the MLS. NAR has agreed to put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on the MLS. Offers of compensation could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation. All right, so we know that. And sellers can offer buyer concessions on an MLS. We know that. Yeah, okay, we know all this. Okay, we just read that thing. I'm just getting so many messages here, and I'm trying to sort through what might be.
I'm not seeing anything new come out than that NAR email. That was and I do agree with you. It was very well thought out. It was written properly. Like, that's great. Fortunately,
I wish I got it before the New York Times. Yeah, it's a little bit behind the 8 ball, but good job on the email. Still, at least one major question unanswered. That is, does the tying effect, still take place? Vulnerabilities right now. Zillow dramatically vulnerable. You see the stock reacting to that. The majority of their compensation is built up in this model. This model now exists till mid-July at the longest, according to the proposed settlement and to the NAR email. Very vulnerable there. Managers of brokerages, very vulnerable. Brokerages, extremely vulnerable. Where did the power shift to? Power certainly shifts to the top 10% of agents across the country, maybe as many as top 15% of agents. Agents now have way more power than brokerages and associations. Okay. Since 2019, we've been hearing, don't worry about this, businesses, right? They just took a huge step down in power. Salespeople are going to exist. Okay. And home sellers are certainly going to want to still have the service, and home buyers are still going to want to have the service. And so those great agents are going to thrive. They now have more power in a world that is being described in front of us by NAR. Okay, so I think that's one thing for sure. It's why knowledge brokers out there, those of you that have been investing in yourselves here over and over and over again, you're in a good spot. Don't worry. It's gonna be a little bit different here, but you're going to be fine on this deal. There's going to be some that aren't fine. I've got at least one or two brokerages not making it through. You might see consolidation in brokerages, trying to join forces, really to get rid of the dead weight in these organizations, the management dead weight. A lot of that is going to go. You're going to need managers to manage a lot more people going forward. Homes.com could be one of the ones that's in a favorable position on this deal. They've got money to spend that they were spending anyways. Now they can really go all in on that while others are pulling back.
I just look at the agent population, and I've been doing this for a long time. And there's some people that they're lazy. They don't care. They don't have that drive. They don't work for the deal, like Ryan Serhant said. And the people that do that throw their hands up in the air, I mean, they're going to be the ones that are left behind here. Now, you said the top. I don't actually agree about the top 15%, because that's someone maybe doing. I mean, if you look at you sell 25 homes, you're in the top 3% of agents in the country, right? So that's kind of the stats that we've seen.
So you have it at
I like the 5 to 10. I think that's really what we're going to see, because all I'm looking at is what's the number one KPI? What's the number one driver in business? It's getting in front of people and having appointments in this business. So the more appointments you can go on, you need to be ready for competitive interviews. We know that over 70% of consumers, they hire the first agent they meet with. Well, that might change now. That's a stat that might change dramatically here. And if you don't know how to present the plan, show them what you're going to do, follow through, communication guarantees, Byron, information, understanding the market, all the stuff that good agents have been doing for years, it's going to be even more important. And I think about this so much. You got to run your business like a business, like just working when you feel like it isn't going to do it anymore. Part-time agents, turn in your license now, because this is not a part-time gig. When you're having, do you know any part-time attorneys, Byron? Do you know any part-time accountants? That's what part-time doctors. Imagine going to a part-time surgeon. You got a back problem, like, hey, I'll take the part-time surgeon. It's not going to work. And this is going to force professionalism at a new level, which is great for consumers, but agents have to, bear down. You're going to have more conversations, high volume numbers, and it's all going to be about how many people can you get in front of and how can you deliver your value.
I have like 15 million things I have to do right now. Vanessa, lead editor at BAM, she just sent me media briefing from NAR legal counsel. She wrote in bold letters to me, Byron, if you listen to this, because she gets access to that as part of the media, Tom, the greatest media company of all time in BAM. She goes, Byron, if you tune in, you cannot quote this. You're not allowed to quote. It's for background only. I'm not going to tune in just for that fact, because I won't follow that rule. But it's like, there's a media briefing. I gotta go live here. We've got a reel we just put up that did 20,000 in like no time here. I've got people at my new house waiting for me. It's like one of those windows, 12 to noon to 12 or whatever. Not
oh, God.
8 to 12.
Yeah, they come 5 minutes before the end of the window, guaranteed.
They're installing all my internet stuff and my TVs, and I'm like, I don't trust my wife to handle the TV portion of it.
Probably the most important part of a new house is getting the TVs operational. I mean, you've been to my house. I've got 75-inch TVs all over the first floor, including outside.
I trust her keeping our kids alive, but when it comes out to the placement of the TVs, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to go handle that part. Of course, this has to break today. Breaks on a Friday.
Well, that's a typical news cycle thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's planned, and you let it calm down, and then they deal with it next week, so people aren't talking about it. We've seen that news cycle. I mean, you're in the media, Byron. That's like media 101. I think they teach that at the Newhouse School at Syracuse that I couldn't get into.
Knowledge Brokers will definitely be back next week with Lisa. We may have to do an emergency pod earlier in the week. Like, who knows? We just don't know. We'll definitely be back next week, and we'll cover everything that happened between now and then. This was a very reactionary pod. This was live reaction. We got the email within the pod, so it's like it's about as Bobby. By the way, if you're listening in the background, just get this one up as soon as it's ready. Don't even wait for whatever time we usually put it out. As soon as this one can be ready, get it up there, and
Sooner the better.
sooner the better on this one. All right, Tom. We've got a lot of
We'll be talking.
we've been working on this. We've been working on this with our team, so we're in good shape, but we've got a lot more to do, and we got to get to it.
If you're not in an environment where you've been training for this, right? Like we've been training for this. We've had trainings. Like we had a stream we did, Byron. We had like 400 some agents tune in from across the country. I'm ready. We're ready, but some people aren't. And this is your time. Like there's a deadline now. You got about 3 months, 4 months, mid-July. That's when this stuff's happening. And if you think consumers aren't going to be talking about it sooner, you're wrong. So get ready and start now. You've got a little bit of time. This is like when the surprise final exam gets announced and you need to pass the class. So there's time here, but the clock's ticking.
Listen, how many people said, oh, the appeals are going to take years? Mid-July, everything goes into effect, ladies and gentlemen. Mid-July of this year. They gave you another spring market, I guess, but the day has come.
I mean, there's going to be people that are ready and people that aren't, and the industry's going to move ahead, whether you're ready or not. You got to make a decision right now if you're in the business.
I know everyone listening to this pod is ready. It's why you're a knowledge broker. Appreciate you guys. Love to see your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll be back with Lisa next week. You're back next week, Tom?
I'm in and
All right.
working. I don't take these luxurious vacations, Byron. I'm preparing for all the new changes.
So Lisa's in Amsterdam. She may never come back.
That might be it. We might have to find a new knowledge broker. I don't know. I doubt that.
She may grab a half a OZ and call it quits. All right. See you, brother.